This video was sponsored by Lazy Dreams and her surplus of balls. Big thank you to Lazy and also our channel members Victor Matusik, Adriana Jones and Riverjoy for making videos like this possible. Today we're going to be talking all about the speculative biology of the Galvanic Mechamorphs from the Ben 10 franchise. And unlike usual, no rambling today folks, let's get right into it because it's hero time. So to start this video off, let's explain the most basic fundamental information regarding Galvanic Mechamorph biology, that being the existence and function of nanites. While no concrete definition of nanites exists as of making this video, I would wager that across both real-world primitive models and sci-fi adaptations of the concept, a nanite can be defined as a microscopic machine that serves a complex function in spite of its diminutive scale, thus defining nanites as a multitude of microscopic machines that serve a variety of complex functions in spite of their diminutive scale. Nothing defines the potential application of nanites better than Galvanic Mechamorphs. Right, wrong show. Unless, as this pop-up trivia from the classic series tells us, Galvanic Mechamorphs are actually made up of nanites, and this piece of pop-up trivia tells us that the homeworld of the Galvanic Mechamorphs is like one big machine, which we can definitely see held true by the time we visited the world itself in Omniverse. This information alone gives us all we need to know in order to form a fundamental understanding as to the overall function behind nanites and, by extension, Galvanic Mechamorphs. Think of nanites like a colony of ants. In the real world, an ant colony has several kinds of specialized roles that each of its members fall into. The workers, the soldiers, the drones, and the queen. The role of the queen is to simply provide a colony with as many ants as possible, so she's basically just a cum dump. Work ants are the busybodies of the colony because they tend to the young, clean, expand the size of the colony's underground tunnels, and gather food, and so on. Soldier ants are basically just bigger and more powerful workers specialized for defending the colony, and the drones are basically just the fuck buddies of the queens, and their whole thing is just making sure that no Antussi is left unplowed. This video suddenly got very weird. Anyway, in a way, Galvanic Mechamorphs are rather like a colony of ants. Think of nanites as ants, where each nanite has a specific purpose that it carries out. And with enough nanites working together, it allows for the overall hive mind to carry out different tasks and functions. But admittedly, this is a fairly flawed explanation, one I only really made for the sake of simplifying things for the sake of understanding. So for a far better explanation, albeit a possibly more complex one, let's actually analyze nanites for what they are: machines. We already know that Galvan B, the home of the Galvanic Mechamorphs, is like one big machine. And we've seen within the franchise itself that Galvanic Mechamorphs are capable of simply forming from the ground beneath them. Let's hold on to that information, and now briefly turn our attention to the system of command that exists with real-world machines. Think of Galvan B as a giant computer. A computer contains a memory that is full of all the various information that it is provided with, and it is capable of performing a variety of encoded functions. However, whereas real computers use lines of code to carry out their functions, Galvan B has nanites. While nanites themselves likely operate off code, they themselves are a type of machine, one with a wide variety of different subtypes. Think of it like different models of car. One is faster, one is used for construction work, one is better for off-road travel, etc. Here, however, each model of nanites is designed to carry out a different function. Let's say Galvan B dispatches a collection of nanites together. These nanites each possess specialized mechanisms that allow them to carry out specific roles within the hive mind that is the collection of nanites. A number of them are sensory nanites, which perhaps have a camera feed that allow the hive mind to see. A number of them are specialized for making sure that other nanites aren't breaking formation and thus helping the hive mind to maintain a solid physical shape as a result. Some are focused on repairing damaged nanites, others are necessary for motor function, etc. With all these billions of microscopic machines working together, they almost resemble the cells of a real body, with large accumulations of different types of cells carrying out different tasks such as digestion, regeneration, thought, and feeling. Now that I've gone to the lengths to explain why all of this makes sense, let me simplify it again for anyone who hasn't been able to follow along super well so far. Galvan B is a computer, nanites are the code within the computer, and the Galvanic Mechamorphs are the functions carried out by the code. Does that make sense? I hope so. But now we have to answer the question of how are Galvanic Mechamorphs able to merge with and upgrade different types of machinery, as well as transform into them at will after initially merging. I think I can explain this as well. Like I said before, Galvan B is a computer, and it contains the memory of a wide variety of different machine functions, which can then be expressed through a variety of different nanites. When these nanites attempt to merge with another machine, considering that they themselves are the size of atoms, what they likely do is replace the existing atoms of that machine with themselves. In this way, what you essentially see when a Galvanic Mechamorph possesses a piece of machinery is more like the nanites take a look at the blueprints of the machinery and then copy them, perfectly mimicking the blueprints in order to become an identical arrangement of nanites instead of their typical humanoid nanite arrangement. Due to the fact that matter can be neither created from nothingness nor destroyed, the replaced matter is likely used in order to create the upgrades that we see, the nanites taking the original material and relocating it, resulting in the additions that are created when they possess machinery. Once they exit their possessed machine, they rearrange all of the machine's atoms back into their original positions, sort of like putting a jigsaw puzzle back together after scrambling it all up. But then, how do the nanites know how to make these different additions? For this, let's refer back to Galvan B's memory bank. If we assume that Galvan B possesses a backlog of every piece of machinery that an individual Mechamorph learns the blueprints for, then when a Mechamorph wants to transform into that machine again, the replicated blueprints are relayed from Galvan B to that specific Mechamorph, sort of like sending a message using your phone, and thus the rearrangement of that Mechamorph nanite begins in order to fit that blueprint once more. In this same way, Galvan B can also relay the blueprints for a variety of other machinery to a rearranging Mechamorph, which can then use said blueprints to make any modifications with the existing material that they are replacing. This would also explain Ship. Ship is the offspring of Bazel, but does not possess the same level of intellect as Bazel himself. This could be because, in order to create Ship, Bazel simply detached a number of his own nanites, and though that separated cluster continued its own autonomous functions and possessed all the same types of nanites that Bazel himself did, due to having less overall nanites to work with, the size and intelligence of the new Mechamorph was stunted, leading to Ship's small scale and dog-like behavior. It's sort of like trying to make a robot out of the spare pieces of a bigger robot. Like, it's never going to be quite as good because you can't use 100% of the same base materials, leaving you with less to work with and therefore meaning compromises have to be made. In terms of Ship's available blueprints, his nanites would be able to transform between the different forms that he himself learned the blueprints for, but also the blueprints that Bazel learned, seeing as Ship himself was originally just a cluster of nanites within Bazel. This also leads me into another topic that I wanted to bring up regarding Galvanic Mechamorphs, that being the species' two outliers, the Omnitrix's Upgrade and Malware. I think that both Upgrade and Malware are the same subtype of Galvanic Mechamorph, and allow me to explain why. We know that Ben isn't able to control which upgrades he bestows upon a machine when possessing it, and we know that Malware is only able to transform his body into machines that he himself has absorbed. I think that the reason why Malware is seen as defective, and the reason why he isn't able to transform properly, is because his connection to Galvan B was cut off. Without Galvan B to give instructions to the nanites within Malware, the nanites were basically stuck in a neutral state. This meant Malware's nanites weren't able to look over any of the machine blueprints stored within Galvan B, and they weren't able to receive new encoded instructions either. This left Malware in his original state, where he was unable to use his abilities like the rest of his kind. As a result, Malware wasn't able to fully transform between different arrangements like other Mechamorphs, but he could still absorb a machine into himself, manually learn the blueprints by having his nanites deconstruct the machine and figure out how it was made, and then rearrange his nanites into a similar state. From there, it would be less about relying on the system memory of Galvan B, but rather relying on the personal memory of his own nanites. But what spare material did he use in order to make these modifications? The answer is simple. The now useless nanites that would have originally served as the connection between the collective that is Malware and the computer that is Galvan B. With a load of spare nanites that no longer serve any particular purpose, the nanites in charge of shepherding the other nanites into the right arrangements would have plenty of spare material to repeatedly reproduce the assorted blueprints memorized by Malware. But what about Upgrade? I think Upgrade is the same type of Mechamorph as Malware. However, whereas Malware has no memory bank to refer to whatsoever and thus must rely entirely on what he himself can do alone, Ben does have a memory bank to refer to as Upgrade. Though that memory bank isn't Galvan B, it's his own memory. While Ben's body would indeed transform into a collection of nanites upon turning into Upgrade, his consciousness would remain as normal, meaning that the nanites within Upgrade are basically regular nanites that all have Ben's thoughts, feelings, and memories constantly relayed to them. In a sense, this makes Ben the Galvan B equivalent for Upgrade, and thus is why Upgrade isn't able to turn into machines he's previously interacted with, nor can he control his upgrading. He can't turn into machines he's previously possessed because the memory bank of blueprints is not consciously stored. It's wiped clean and refreshed every time Ben transforms into Upgrade, meaning that there are no existing templates to copy. The reason Ben can't control his upgrading is likely the same as how we have intrusive thoughts, where random ideas that unconsciously pop up in his head are relayed to all of the nanites, and thus those additions are made with the material of the possessed machine. It would also explain why a lot of the time when Upgrade upgrades something, it tends to just end up being covered in guns and spikes and lasers and stuff. Ben just likes action and cool weaponry, so if that's what he's thinking about, that's what Upgrade becomes. Essentially, typical Galvanic Mechamorphs are reliant on the databank of Galvan B. Upgrade is reliant on the databank of Ben, and Malware is reliant on the databank of his own nanites. meaning that the latter two simply rely on transforming existing material based on personal knowledge, the only difference being that Ben is technically an external memory bank put into a different body, whereas malware is just obviously his own body's memory bank. And the former transform themselves and existing material based on given blueprints. Finally, I want to touch on how Galvanic Mechamorphs likely get their power source, as well as the laser beams seen used by Galvanic Mechamorphs like Upgrade and Malware. To explain their fuel source, nanites likely get their fuel by absorbing electricity in their environment, or by transferring the heat generated by the friction of making contact with other nanites into electrical energy, thus making a constant sustainable fuel source. In the case of the laser beam, it's likely just that a load of nanites expel all of their existing energy all at once in order to create a big discharge of raw energy, and then those drained nanites begin the process of refueling after the discharge of all their energy is complete. But with all that said, that pretty much wraps up everything I had to say with this video. But before we finish up for now, let's move into the results of last video's poll, as well as the poll for this video. So last time I asked you guys, do you prefer featherless dinosaurs, feathered dinosaurs, or do you like both equally? With 220 overall votes, 12% of you said you preferred featherless dinosaurs, 20% of you said you preferred feathered dinosaurs, and in the lead by a vast majority, 68% of you said you like both equally. Personally, I like feathered dinosaurs more than featherless ones. I think they just look a lot cooler with feathers, but you know, it's definitely interesting to see what you guys all thought. Now, for this video's poll, I'm going to be asking you, which Galvanic Mechamorph out of the following options is your favourite character? Upgrade, Ship, Malware, or Bazel? But with that, I'll hopefully see you all again sometime soon. I'm so sorry for the confusing video.